When was the last time you sat down to pray and actually knew what to say? Not the memorized words, not the formula, bless this, forgive that, thank you for another day. The real thing. A conversation where you felt like you were actually talking to someone. Because for a lot of people, prayer stopped feeling like that a long time ago. And the advice they get is always the same: pray more, pray harder, be more consistent, wake up earlier. And nobody seems to notice that telling someone who cannot find words to just use more words is not helpful. It is like telling someone who is drowning to swim faster. Last time, we looked in the mirror at the uncomfortable possibility that we might be part of the problem in our own relationships. Today is different. Today is for those quiet moments. The ones late at night or early in the morning when you sit down, close your eyes, open your mouth, and nothing comes. Not because you do not believe, because something between you and the words has gone silent, and you do not know how to fix it. Here is the thing most people will not say out loud. Prayer, for many believers, has become a performance, not intentionally, not cynically. But over time, the words you use start sounding like everyone else's words. You pray the way you heard other people pray. You use the phrases that sound right. Lord, I just ask that you. And after a while, you are not talking to God anymore. You are performing a version of talking to God. And the distance you feel is not between you and heaven. It is between you and your own honesty. The reason words stop coming is not because your faith is weak. It is because the format you were given does not fit what you are actually feeling. You were taught prayer as a structure: praise, confession, thanksgiving, supplication. A neat package, and that works, until what you are feeling is not neat. Until what you need to say is messy and angry and confused and full of doubt. And then the structure becomes a cage, and silence feels like the only honest response. So here are 3 approaches. Not a list, not a formula. 3 doorways into prayer for the moments when the front door is locked. The first one is gratitude, but not the way you have heard it before. Not a list of blessings, not thank you for my health, my family, my job. That kind of gratitude can become another performance, checking boxes to prove you are grateful enough. What works is smaller, much smaller. One thing, one concrete, specific, unrepeatable thing from the last 24 hours. The way the light looked through the window this morning, the fact that someone texted you back, a meal that tasted good, the weight of a blanket when you got into bed last night. A woman once described her version of this. She had not been able to pray for weeks. Everything felt forced. And then she sat down, and the only thing she could think of was, the coffee was good this morning. That was it. That was the prayer. Thank you for the coffee. And she almost dismissed it. That is not real prayer. That is nothing. But she let it sit. And the next night, it was the color of the sky on her drive home. And the night after that, it was the sound of her daughter laughing in the other room. None of these were spiritual in the way she had been taught to define spiritual, but they were true. And truth turned out to be the door she had been looking for. The reason this works is not magical. It is mechanical. Gratitude for something specific forces your brain out of abstraction and into the present. You cannot be anxious about the future and noticing the warmth of a coffee mug at the same time. Your attention narrows, the noise gets quieter. And what happens, slowly, not dramatically, is that one specific thing opens a door. You start there. And sometimes that is all the prayer is, one sentence, one real observation. And that is enough, not because God needs to hear it, because you need to say something true. The second approach is harder. It is lament, and most people have never been taught that this is prayer at all. Lament means telling God the truth about what you feel, especially when what you feel is not pretty. Anger, frustration, confusion, abandonment, the stuff you were taught to clean up before bringing to God. But here is what the Bible actually models. The Psalms are full of it. Roughly 1/3 of all Psalms are laments. 1/3. That is not a footnote. That is a genre. Psalm 13 opens with a line that would get you looks in most prayer groups. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? That is not polite. That is not grateful. That is a man shaking his fist at the sky and saying, I am in pain and you are nowhere. And it is in the Bible. Not as a cautionary tale, as a prayer, as a model of what honest communication with God looks like when everything hurts. So the invitation here is simple but costly. Say what you actually feel, not what you think you should feel. If you are angry, say it. If you feel abandoned, say that. If the words that come are, why are you doing this to me? That is a prayer. It might not feel holy, but it is honest. And honest prayer, ugly, raw, unedited, is closer to what the Psalms look like than anything most churches teach on Sunday morning. Nathan learned this the hard way. There was a stretch, months, not days, where every prayer felt hollow. Same words, same ceiling, same nothing. And then one night, instead of praying the right way, the only thing that came out was, I do not know if you are there, and I am tired of pretending I do. That was the whole prayer. No amen, no structure. And for the first time in months, something shifted. Not because God answered, because the wall between Nathan and his own honesty came down. And it turned out that wall was thicker than the one between him and God. The third approach is the one that will feel the strangest. It is silence. Not silence as failure, not the silence of someone who tried to pray and gave up. Intentional silence, sitting in the presence of God without saying anything, on purpose. This has a long history in Christian tradition. The contemplatives called it centering prayer or the prayer of presence. The idea is simple. You do not always need words to be with someone. Think about the people closest to you in your life, the ones you trust the most. You can sit with them in a room and say nothing, and it does not feel awkward. It feels like home. The silence is not empty. It is full. It is the kind of quiet that only exists between people who trust each other. What if prayer could be like that? Not a monologue, not a request form. Just being there. Sitting in the quiet and letting whatever comes or does not come be enough. You do not have to fill the space. You do not have to earn the silence. You just have to show up. And practically, because this is supposed to be practical, here is what that looks like. You sit down, you set a timer. 5 minutes. Maybe 3 if 5 feels impossible. You close your eyes, and your mind will wander. It will. Within seconds. You will think about tomorrow and last week and the dishes and that conversation you should have had differently. And when that happens, because it will, every single time you do not judge it, you do not restart. You just come back, gently, like a compass drifting and finding north again. That returning, that gentle refocusing is the prayer, not the absence of distraction, the willingness to come back, over and over and over. That is what showing up looks like when you have no words left. There is a verse that most people gloss over, Romans chapter 8, verse 26. Paul writes, "The Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know what to pray for as we ought, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words." Read that again slowly. Paul, the man who wrote half the New Testament, is saying, there are moments when you will not know what to pray. You will not have the words, and in those moments, the Spirit prays for you, not with eloquent language, with groanings too deep for words, with something beneath language, beneath thought, something that happens in the space you create by simply showing up and being silent. That is not a failure of prayer. That is prayer at its deepest. The moment you stop performing and start being present, even if you feel nothing, even if you hear nothing, even if the ceiling still looks like a ceiling, something is happening. You may not feel it. You do not need to. So here's what you can try tonight. Not all 3, just one. If you have been going through the motions, try one specific thank you. Something real. Something you can see or touch or taste. If you have been holding something back from God, something angry, something hurt, something you think is too ugly to say out loud, say it. He can take it. The Psalms are proof. And if you are simply out of words, sit down. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Close your eyes. Do not say anything. Just be there. That is enough. And if you have tried all of this and still feel nothing, that is okay. That does not mean it is not working. It means something deeper might be going on. And we will talk about that next time.